Uh, on- okay, so on this computer just stopped and started. I hope everyone heard what I said so far. So on July 10th, um, we were contacted by various people in the community. And on July 13th, after hearing from more individuals and trying to gather information, I called an in-house meeting where I called for the officers to meet, and also our media past chair, Laura Spalter, and vice chair, Bob Bender, who was also a past Parks Committee chair, and Chuck Merler. So we called the meeting and we met on, did I say March or July? July 14th. July 14th, we met, and after our discussions, we decided to schedule an emergency meeting so that we could all be on the same page and gather information. So on the 14th, I also spoke with Councilman Eric Dinowitz, who is here, and he will speak. I'm just giving the basics, and I'll let the speakers give you the meat of the information that we have here. We sent out a save the date on July 17th, and also on the same date, July 17th, we sent out an agenda for an emergency meeting. The following day, on July 18th, I sent a letter with Parks Chair Deborah Travis. Together, we sent a joint letter to the mayor's office with our concerns with this stadium. And not only concerns, because it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. We don't know because we don't have information. So that's why we're here. We sent a letter out to the mayor on the 18th. And I also spoke with Assemblyman Dinowitz, and thank you for showing up. I see you there, and he will also speak. Today, the 20th, I spoke with myself and District Manager Farah. We spoke with the Community Affairs from the deputy from the mayor's office. And we were told that the International Cricket Council, people who want to put up this cricket stadium for next summer, June of 2024, that one, that they do want to engage with the public. They are open to it, but a decision hasn't been made. So that's one of the reasons why they are not here, the International Cricket Council. And the reason that we put together this meeting so quickly also is because we were advised that the decision of what city will host it should have been done last week or this week. So we felt that we needed to meet as soon as possible rather than wait until September, when it just lessens our chances of acting and gathering information. And there's a lot of issues that have to be done in between that. The International Cricket Council also advised the mayor's office that they will be funding, putting the site together. They will fund it 100%, and that they are going to engage in capital investments in our community long after the stadium is gone, so that the community benefits from the stadium should Van Cortlandt Park be chosen. And it's estimated that an anticipated revenue for the local economy could be up to 150 million or more. They are aware of all the, not all, because we haven't given them all, but they are concerned of the parking situation, the crowd condition, the ULURP process. So it's an open dialogue. So what I'm looking for tonight for this meeting is that everyone be given a chance to speak, that everyone is being allowed at least 2 minutes. And if you heard something that someone else said, please give the time to someone else who may want to speak, because this isn't the only meeting that we're going to have on this issue. We're meeting now because we think time is of the essence in case Van Cortlandt is picked this week or last week. We're just trying to gather information and get the community's input as well as the elected officials. So 2 minutes per person, except for, of course, the elected officials. And everyone will get a chance to speak once. The time period was from 7 to 9 p.m. We're going to try to stick as close to that as possible. And we're going to be respectful because this is an informational meeting. And that's it for me so far, I think. I hope I handle everything. And I am going to ask if Farah, if you could raise your hand, or Sergio, if there's a quorum there yet. If not, then we'll just pass it off to Deb, and then we'll do the minutes, rather the roll call afterwards. Okay, you're muted. So Deb, if you can hear me, you can go right ahead. Hey, Miriam, can you hear me? Because I see you shaking your head off. Okay, thank you. Okay. Can anyone in the room hear me? Okay, Zoom can hear me, but the room can't. Hey, Deb? Deb, you ready for your presentation? I'd hate to have other people speak if the board members can't hear. That would be an issue.
The room is muted.
Let me give them a call.
The boardroom is muted.
I know, I see everybody. Hey, you guys have to unmute yourself. I'm asking for Deb.
I know, I just said that too.
Yeah, so,
They're on.
See anybody.
so,
Yellow lines around.
now can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, to everybody in the room. We can hear you.
All right, Tom can
That's
hear
all
me.
we can hear us.
Okay. All right, I'll start over.
Can you hear Deb now?
Can you hear me now?
Are we being recorded?
Yes, we hear you. We can hear you.
All right, Tom says he can see. Okay, I'm gonna start over. So thank you, everybody, for coming. What brings us here tonight is that we heard from the community that there was a proposal to build a temporary cricket stadium in Van Cortlandt Park to host the T20 Men's World Cup in cricket in 2024. So this event would take place in June of 2024. The stadium would be about 30,000 seat capacity. The staff for this event is between 4,000 and 6,000 people. That's the estimate from the presenters. We know that they believe that they would need to close off the southeast corner of Van Cortlandt Parade Ground from January, when they would begin installation of this stadium, until the end of the tournament. So there would be kind of a soft launch of some sort in May, and then there would be 4 to 6 matches, cricket matches, over the course of June, and then they would spend July removing everything and then packing up. The stadium itself and the additional tents, there would be a fan zone where there would be food and beverages, batting cages, a stage for performances, a broadcast area, just all of the kinds of things you need for a major sporting event. And let's be clear about this, cricket is the #2 sport in the world, and as much as it's not like the #2 sport in the United States, this is a very, very big popular sport, and it's a very big deal to have this World Cup. So I looked up what the attendance was for the finals in 2022 when they last held this. The finals, there were 100,000 people at the final game. So we can assume that whatever they're planning for Van Cortlandt Park won't be a final, but the cricket stadiums in 2022 were generally between 50,000 capacity. They were as large as Yankee Stadium, for comparison. So it's a large capacity event. That's kind of basics of what's expected. The site itself would be 19.5 acres. I'm not sure if I said that. Just for comparison, the parade ground itself is 62 acres. The site would have a fence around it, so there would be no public access to any of this from January through until they remove the stadium and all of the tents and everything. So then the other piece of it is, and these are kind of big unknowns, is how long is it going to take to restore? Because it's not just that they're going to build a stadium with broadcast booths and lights and sound and all the things you would have with a contemporary sporting event. They're going to put a cricket pitch, which is there's nothing quite as ridiculous as someone describing a sport they do not play, but I will endeavor to describe it. The cricket pitch is the large rectangle in the center. It's similar to baseball in that way. And then there's a large outfield, but it's all the way around. And so there would be sod placed in the outfield area. There would be a brand new cricket pitch put in the middle. And it's very unclear where this would sit in relation to the existing cricket pitches that are already there. We already have 8 cricket pitches, some of them synthetic, some of them not. There's also irrigation in this part of Van Cortlandt Park in the parade ground. I will say that there was a note in the presentation or their proposal that one of the reasons they were positioning this in the southeast corner is because there isn't irrigation there, but the footprint is large enough that it clearly would touch where their irrigation is. That would be my assumption, just looking at the size of the footprint of this thing. And also just for points of comparison, New York Philharmonic has about 7,000 people in terms of attendance each year when we do the event. That event, it is unclear where that would be held if this event were to take place, because it takes place in the exact same spot. The Manhattan College Invitational is about 10,000 people. Also unclear how that would be impacted, because it's very unclear how the track would be impacted around the parade ground. We don't really know with the amount of trucks and stuff that would be coming and going to install everything. There are concerns that have been raised by people who are very qualified to raise them, that there would be impacts to the track and to the field at large. Another impact that's just been raised is just as a concern is the African enslaved people's burial ground is right there adjacent. It's not really protected for 35,000 people walking by. So we don't know what kinds of protection has been put in place. Also, obviously we've got the greenways that run around that help allow us to cross through the park. You've got Van Cortlandt Mansion, which would certainly be impacted. There's just a lot of different normal aspects of this park that would be potentially very seriously impacted by this thing. One other thing I just wanted to raise is that this event is not a free event. It would be one thing if they were putting a 35,000 person stadium in Van Cortlandt Park and this event were open to the public and everybody could attend. This event is for sale. And the tickets for this event, while we do not know how much they will cost for this specific event or what the price range is going to be, we do know that for the last T20 World Cup that the ticket prices range generally from about $250 to $4,000 to $5,000 for the final, for the very good seats in the final. These are like U.S. Open tennis tickets. These are, again, this is a serious, important event. So when you take a part of the park like this, 19.5 acres, you fence it off, and you say we're only going to allow people to use this part of the park if they pay for tickets, you're converting, in our view, or at least in my view, like when I look at these things, this looks like a conversion, even temporarily, of a public park into a private stadium. And so my view would be that this requires going through the alienation process, which, you know, it has a lot of public feedback opportunities. It has a lot of opportunity for input, identifying all of these impacts one by one, generating all of the documentation, talking to the stakeholders, and finding ways to mitigate it, and finding ways to find out, is it really feasible to do it here? Vancouver Park barely has electricity, right? If you think of like what Yankee Stadium has in terms of infrastructure, Vancouver Park does not have those things at this time. So, it's, you know, it's kind of like, it was just completely puzzling to see this proposal at this point. I think that's all I've got to say right now. Just one last piece. So the alienation process is one that has multiple steps. The first is an EIS kind of SECRA process where you basically identify the impacts. Who was impacted? How do you mitigate it? How do you deal with traffic? Is there a liquor license? Will there be alcohol served? How will you address the crowds as they're leaving? Where will they be directed? Where will there be parking? Will there be people arriving by buses? Will there be teams arriving by buses? That kind of stuff. All of that is done and discussed and laid out by the presenters in a SECRA process. Then the city council would pass a resolution saying, you know, the mitigation efforts that need to be done, they would kind of put that into the rules, the law. And then there would be a request goes to the state to say, we would like you to, we agree that this section of the park can be used for this event, right? And then it goes to the state, and then the state also, the Assembly and the Senate both have to pass resolutions in support of it. This is so that we all get an opportunity to talk about, you know, and to have really good public process around something that's going to impact all of us, right? So all of that process, you can tell just by what I'm talking about, it's going to take time. And this proposal would present, would want to kind of have boots on the ground in January. Then the Assembly doesn't meet again until the spring. So I think that there's real serious concerns about process too that I want to raise. So with that, I think that's all I have to say. I'm going to hand it back to Julie. Julie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks so much. Okay, so before we move on, let's just do a bit of roll call and then we could just proceed and go on with the meeting. Is Margaret there? If not, I'll just run off the names.
Margaret's here.
Okay, great.
That's all right.
Hello.
All right. Ready? Julie?
Ready. Go ahead.
Great. Sylvia Alexander. Here. Constance Barnes-Watson. Bob Bender.
Here.
Kelly Buford.
Present.
Christopher Calhoun.
Here in Fort Lauderdale.
Well played.
Hello.
Lee Chong.
Here.
Sebastian Chitalopoulos.
He's going to be absent.
Sebastian.
He's absent.
Okay.
That's Jablonski.
Okay. Ingrid De Leon.
Here.
Berdella here. Margaret Donato.
Here.
Robert Finuzzi.
He's going to be absent as well.
Nicholas Fazio.
Here.
Stephen Fruit.
Here.
David Gelman.
Present.
Rosemary Ginty. Rosemary. Julia Gomez. Here. Edward Green.
Here.
Rashida Hilliard. Robert Jaglowski.
I'm here, but I'm a spectator.
Robert Kaplan.
Here.
Scott Crompinger. Sorry, Scott. Proctor Lowe.
Present.
Charles Merdler.
Here.
Peter Morris. All right. Omar Murray. Julie Reyes,
Here.
Georgia Santiago, Ramdat Singh,
Present.
Laura Spalter, Deborah Travis, Sergio Villaverde, Martin Wolpoff. Okay,
Hello. Hi.
I think Georgia, I spoke to Georgia. She was coming in. Is she on the line?
Hello.
I'm here.
There she is. That's her voice. Margaret, did you hear her?
I'm gonna give
Oh.
folks one last shot. Sebastian, Robert Fanuzzi,
Absent.
Rosemary Givney, Rashida Hilliard, Scott, Theodore, Omar. Okay.
Hello. Okay.
Okay, Margaret, you have Georgia, right?
I'm on.
No, wait, Georgia. I
Oh.
want to make sure that Margaret
okay.
heard you.
Yeah, what if we don't hear our name called?
In the room.
Margaret,
What?
did you hear Georgia?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and Rob Chaklovsky, I'm sorry if I messed up your name. You said you're here, but you're a spectator?
Well, I'm according to the rules, right? I can't participate because I'm not physically there, right?
No. You
None of
had
us
an,
is-
you had an excuse. You do not count for the quorum, but you can count for discussions.
Okay,
Like me,
Okay.
we don't count for a quorum, but we count for the discussion. So you're staying for the meeting, correct?
yes.
Julie?
Julie, this is
Can I make a
Omar is
motion at
there.
this time to excuse the absent members so that they can be present
Right,
for all purposes. To have a quorum.
okay.
Against the law, no.
And someone said that Omar.
We have 19 present. We have quorum. Let's move on.
Without them, yeah.
Okay, we have it.
Okay, so I just heard someone say that Omar is here.
Oh, God.
So now the next step is our speakers. I see some people have hands up. We will get to everyone with their hands up. Your pins as you put your hands up in order. So please let us go through the order of the agenda, but I do have you on the list. Jade, Miriam, John Moore. There was another one, a telephone number, and Belinda. You guys will, and Rob Spalter and Thomas McGuire. We have people who called in to be put on the list, so we're going to do the elected officials first, the people who called in, and then everyone with their hands up. And we'll also ask if you have any documents that you want to submit to the office, or even the statement that you're saying, feel free to send it in. Okay, so we'll go on to the next. We're on agenda point number 3, which is a report by the elected officials. So we have Kira Gannon, Borough President's Office. Let me see if you're muted. I'll see if we can.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. Good.
Okay, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Kira Gannon. I'm here on behalf of the borough president, who unfortunately had a previous engagement tonight. I will read her statement and I will submit it as well for the record. I want to thank you for convening tonight's meeting on the proposal by City Hall to potentially host the Cricket World Cup at Van Cortlandt. As a borough of opportunity, we pride ourselves on being strategic, thoughtful, and intentional in the decisions we make to move the Bronx forward. Creating local jobs and stimulating our economy should always be at the forefront of everything we do, and this proposal could be what we need at this time. Hosting the 2024 T20 World Cup could be a significant win for the Bronx and one we should embrace. This event would bring in tourists from around the world while also celebrating a sport played by growing communities throughout our borough, especially after just learning it's the number II sport played in the world. It would also be an opportunity to highlight Van Cortlandt Park, one of our borough's neighborhood gems, that contributes to making the Bronx a beautiful place to live, work, and visit. Hosting an international event like the Cricket World Cup would help make the Bronx a global destination. Tens of thousands of tourists that this event would draw to the borough will generate significant revenue for our local businesses, restaurants, and put a spotlight on all the amazing things happening in the Bronx. I also recognize that this is a preliminary proposal, and before a decision is rendered, community stakeholders, including the Community Board, Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, local businesses, merchants, cricket players, sports leagues, and park advocates must be engaged with on this project. I just want to note that the borough president did meet with other elected officials and the ICC not that long ago, but they were only engaged one time. Sports has the ability to be beneficial to our borough by bringing youth, older adults, and families together. But we must ensure that any proposal does not cause undue hardship for residents and families in the Northwest Bronx. We must get an understanding from City Hall of the full magnitude of this project. The construction of a temporary stadium would cause serious disruption in the park, and full effects of this must be understood. Additionally, the potential issues regarding traffic and noise must be mitigated. We must also push for permanent improvements to the park to come along with hosting this event. There are longstanding issues facing Van Cortlandt Park that should be resolved as part of this proposal. I look forward to receiving additional information from the administration as well as feedback from Community Board 8 and other stakeholders on this preliminary proposal. I believe that the Bronx can be a viable location to host the World Cup and bring world-class cricket to our borough. If we are chosen as the host site for this event, I hope that we can highlight to the members of the International Cricket Council the very best of our borough, and that any partnership and conversations are mutually beneficial for all parties involved. I also believe that the necessary mitigations will be possible to ensure that this project is a success, and I hope that we are able to reach an agreement that is acceptable to all stakeholders. We believe in creating success and economic opportunities as pathways to prosperity that includes local jobs and important investments in our borough as priorities of our blueprint. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Thank you for attending and thank you for relaying the message. Okay. Our next speaker is Assembly Zinowitz, and for those who just joined us again, I apologize for the delay. Thank you for coming, and everyone is going to speak after the elected officials, and everyone will get a 2-minute chance to speak. So Assemblyman Zinowitz, you have the floor.
Good evening, everybody. Congratulations, Julie Reyes and Farah Rubin, on your new positions. I know you'll be great. So I appreciate that the mayor wants to have a huge event in the Bronx. I think it is a vote of confidence for the Bronx, and I'm sure that the administration has the best of intentions. However, my number one concern above everything else is protecting Van Cortlandt Park. That is something that I have fought for, and many of you have fought for a very long time. We went through a horrific process 20 years ago on the other side of the park, and it was damaging to the park, and promises were made, promises were not kept. The only promise that you can count on is the one that's already been delivered upon. So I think Deb Travis really gave a very good summary, but let me give you my take on it. I believe there are legal issues that would have to be overcome, and I'm not sure how easily or how quickly that could happen. The park alienation process is a long one. The legislature is not scheduled to be in session until next year. And typically the sponsor of legislation to alienate parkland would be the local assembly member and the local Senate member. And speaking for myself, I can't imagine under what circumstances I would ever sponsor legislation to alienate parkland in Van Cortlandt Park. EIS, ULURP, these are all processes that take months, many months. But in terms of a project itself, I did a little Googling. So Google told me that the parade ground was 43 acres, not 62, but I'm sure Deb is right. But in either case, 19 and a half acres is either almost half of the parade ground or almost a third of the parade ground. Huge, huge. It'll be adjacent to the enslaved African burial ground. It'll be, you know, they showed us renderings of it, but the rendering doesn't take into account a lot of things that are going to have to go on. It's not only the stadium, it's everything that's going to surround the stadium, how the truck's going to get in and out, what kind of damage are they going to cause, what kind of damage is the stadium itself going to cause. We don't have that information. And what guarantees do we really have that everything will be fixed up afterwards and that we'll get all kinds of goodies afterwards? You know, when the filtration plant was rammed down our throats 20 years ago, $220 million of money was supposed to come into Bronx parks, not into Van Cortlandt Park, but into other parks. And it took, I'm not even sure they finished spending it yet. So who knows how long that's going to take? And is the city going to be able to handle this? You know, we've been working to try to get action on the other side of the park, dealing with these loud, huge parties at the Chandler Recreation Area. And up until now, the city hasn't been able to deal with that situation, which is a tiny fraction of what this would be. We asked for a small number of PEP officers to be assigned to Van Cortlandt Park, and the city turned it down. So why do we think that suddenly there's going to be this great interest in making things right at the park? If there's 34,000 people coming in, even if 10% of the people come by car, where are 3,400 cars going to go? It's an enormous amount of traffic that would come into the area. And by the way, when we're talking about acres, again, Google, don't go by me. Hopefully, I assume Google's right. Yankee Stadium field is 3.5 acres, and Yankee Stadium itself is 11.6 acres. So we're talking about something that's nearly double the size of Yankee Stadium. If you want something as big as Yankee Stadium, here's a thought. Do it at Yankee Stadium. I don't know what the baseball schedule is next year, but one thing I do know is that the Mets and the Yankees don't play at home at the same time. So you can do Citi Field and Yankee Stadium, plenty of room there, plenty of seats there, plenty of parking there. How about the Orchard Beach parking lot? Pretty sure there's parking in the Orchard Beach parking lot, but we know there's plenty of space there. But the infrastructure that we have to deal with, we're talking about electricity, we're talking about, I don't know, plumbing. I don't know what would go into it, but I do know that it would cause substantial disruption. And what about the people of the Bronx and elsewhere that use the park? What about the people who use the track, school track contests, competitions, the track club? What about the Philharmonic concert? What about the people who actually play cricket? They're people from the community, the average people who aren't going to be able to afford $1,000 a ticket to watch a cricket game, the baseball fields that are over there. What about all of that stuff? How is that going to be? Where are they going to be able to use a field if not in Van Cortlandt Park? Because you have to offer them something. And by the way, 6 months? I don't think so. If they start doing the work in January to construct this and they finish in May or June and they have the 2 weeks in June, if it takes 5 months to build it, I'm sure it's going to take more than 2 weeks to take it down. So all these things haven't been answered yet. And so I don't want to say no, never. I don't want to be unreasonable, but I can't imagine how these things are going to be worked out. So even with the best of intentions, the bottom line to me is we have to protect Van Cortlandt Park. It's not merely a neighborhood park. It's the greatest park in the city. We cannot allow anything to happen that's going to damage the park. So unless there's an absolute ironclad guarantees, and I'm not sure how you can get that, then this thing doesn't sound like it can be worked out. So I really wonder if an effort should be made to find a place in the Bronx, because I would love for such a major thing to happen in the Bronx. But don't hurt our park. Don't hurt Van Cortlandt Park.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here. I hope you're feeling better too.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll hear from Councilman Zinowitz. See if you can unmute.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
Julie, congratulations again. I think I got to wish you congratulations to the last meeting, although this is, I think, the first meeting you're chairing. And what a
Yes.
first meeting to what a first meeting to have. And of course, hello everyone, all 20 of you in that tiny room. So I a number of us elected officials were briefed on the proposed stadium, and certainly it is nice to be recognized. I think the Bronx is frequently left behind. We just passed our city budget, and one of the big fights we were having is making sure the Bronx got the resources we deserve and is recognized for the wonderful communities we have in the Bronx. So it's certainly nice to be recognized. But there are a number of issues that are, I think, major roadblocks. And one of the big ones is communication from the administration. Now, I want everyone here to know that I did reach out to the administration on numerous occasions over the past few weeks. So they've communicated with me, but I'm very disappointed that they are not providing a presentation directly to you. Now, what they said is, well, we don't have all the answers to everything yet. The site hasn't been chosen. There are still things being worked out. But there are still things that they have information on. And I've certainly flagged it with them. Certainly the board should have been given the information that's available. And of course, all of you watching tonight should have been given information to the extent that they have it. And I am concerned that if that's the way we're starting out the process, that as we continue the process, your voices may not be heard. And that's deeply troubling to me. I know there is a representative from the mayor's office here with us tonight listening on the meeting. And certainly they can take that back to the mayor. I'm in communication with the mayor's office, and I am very clear that you all need to be part of whatever conversation, and they need to hear directly from you the questions and concerns. But my concerns remain with all of you. Beyond the legal challenges that this may face, there are significant impacts this could have on Van Cortlandt Park and the surrounding area. And as much as cricket is the second most popular sport in the world, there are people in our own community who play cricket who won't have access to their own park. And it's important that their needs are met. Not to mention its close proximity to the enslaved African burial ground, the potential damage. All of these things need to be heard before moving forward. Every weekend throughout the year, I see the track meets on Van Cortlandt Park. Big questions about what would happen to them, and are they going to be moved out or even have the ability to run the track? And of course, as was mentioned before, we have raised a number of concerns about Van Cortlandt Park that have so far gone unheard. I think one of the top ones for me is a PEP command at Van Cortlandt Park. It is the third largest park and the first best park, but the third largest park in New York City. And it doesn't have its own PEP command, and there's significant issues we have there. This is something that we've brought up in letters. I've brought this up at hearings directly to the Parks Commissioner about having the PEP command there. And my concern is if the city isn't able to address our concerns before this tournament, I have no assurances that they'll be able to address our concerns during, and importantly, after. If they can recognize Van Cortlandt Park as an incredible place to have an international tournament, then they should be pretty sure that they can recognize it for all of the wonderful things that it provides to our community on a daily basis. As was mentioned, Chandler Recreation Area before, the city has still not been able to address the growing concerns we have over there. And with the issues of cleanliness, of security, we have before, and we'll have after this event, I have concerns about their ability to manage an event like this. So between that and the significant damage and questions about any investments that would go directly to Van Cortlandt Park, it is critically important that the administration is engaging with the community now. And I'm looking forward to hearing the concerns of the community. And I am looking forward to the administration immediately engaging the community on all of the concerns you've shared, sharing with the community all of the information that they have to date so that they can make an informed decision and that they can hopefully or potentially address the concerns that all of you are going to raise tonight.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. And thanks for taking the time out the other day.
Thank you.
Very appreciative. Okay, I'd like to know, is there anyone here from Council Member Sanchez's office? If you are, you can unmute yourself, please. Okay, is there anyone here from Council Member De La Rosa's office? Carmen De La Rosa? Are there any other elected officials at this meeting? So far, we have 160 people in attendance on Zoom plus the office. So if there's any other elected officials, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself? Okay.
Wow.
Did someone say something? No? Okay, so then we'll go to agenda item number 4, which is the questions and answers, or rather questions and comments. We're going to start first with the board members, and then we're going to have the community take their chance, not their chance, take their speak. So the board members, Deb, I'll let you do this because it's really your committee and you can see people, and just remember, please, board members, 2 minutes each and one question at a time. Chuck Mertla. Chuck, let me, I guess you're muted. Can you guys unmute yourself in the office? Chuck? Chuck, can you hear?
Can I be heard?
Yes, the floor is yours.
I come at this quite differently from everyone else so far. My misbegotten youth grew up in England, and I played cricket. And I love it. I have not forgotten it, if it's only nostalgia. It's a wonderful sport. It is a sport that many people from the Bronx, particularly people from the Caribbean, play every week at Van Cortlandt Park. They're entitled to do so, and they're entitled as much to their sport as you and I are to football, baseball, tennis, and what have you. That is something we must all consider. Yes, there are issues here. There are serious issues. There are all of the issues that Eric and Jeffrey correctly pointed out, legal issues. They have to be addressed. There are issues like the issue that David Gelman has focused on, which is the irrigation. How do we protect it? What assurances do we have that they are protected? There are issues as to making damn sure that when it's over, it's over. It's not like the temporary facilities that were built in Queens for the World Expo and are still there. So what do we have to do? We've got to put together a list of those things that have to be addressed. They have to be addressed in terms, if there's all this money being charged and raised, we need guarantees, economic hard bonds to guarantee that this is taken down in July, that it is not another expo that stays there temporarily forever. We need guarantees that there are provided the kind of safeguards that are wanted for the irrigation and for the rebuilding of the park, and maybe even for the improvement of the park. We need guarantees that nobody starts prematurely before the end of the fall when people can enjoy it. We need guarantees to make sure that there are provisions, alternate provisions made for those who want to run on tracks and for people who want to play other games. Those are the kind of issues that Jeffrey addressed, that Eric addressed. They've got to be done. It takes time. And the only question that you have really is there a will to address it? Let me make a point that I regard as extremely important. Outside of our circle in the Bronx and the city of New York, in Europe, Bronx is still remembered as the place that is burning. it is still remembered in rather deprecatory terms. We here have an opportunity to show the world, not just the state, the city, and the country, but the world, that we are really a cosmopolitan city worthy of being called such. We have a chance to.
2 minutes.
This facility, maybe in the future, to host a Democratic or Republican National Convention at Yankee Stadium or elsewhere. We have that opportunity. What we have got to do, in my view, are to do 3 things. 1, we need to put together, constructively and not destructively, a list of the things that really have got to be done. I can't think of all of them. David Gelman might, but I cannot. Number 2, we need to put together those kind of guarantees that we would insist upon, financially supported and independent, so that we can, the community and the community board and others can actually sue to collect on the bond and do it. And there are ways of doing that. 3, we need to do something else. We need to realize that we ask the city to help us. Make sure that we have housing, to make sure that we have adequate sanitation and the like. We have to recognize that there is a counter responsibility on our part to contribute to the city. We are not an elite community, and if we are, we shouldn't be.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck, and thanks for the work you've done. I heard someone say 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Yes, I did say 2 minutes, but there was that core group that I had thanked in the beginning of this meeting, and Chuck was one of those people that within a week, they've done a lot of work. So moving forward after this, all the speakers will have 2 minutes. And so let's move forward. So board members.
We're still recognizing community board members.
Yes, we're doing the board members first. Deb, do you want to do it, or do you want me to call on people?
Yeah, I can do it. Laura, you
And
got your hand
I'll
up?
I'll have the alarm here.
Okay, I have 4 points to make, Laura. My opposition is the same as it was 3 years ago, when the board disapproved Founders Entertainment's proposal to build a stadium in the parade grounds for 55,000 people for several musical performances. It's at that juncture is when we found out about thousands of waterheads and drainage issues sensitive under Van Cortlandt Park's parade ground. It cost $16 million. It was put in years ago with the filtration monies, and it's very, very sensitive. One of the things that troubles me is they say they'll take it down in July, and then they're going to look to the city agencies to okay everything about what needs to be done. Well, what if a sensitive pipe does not show problems, breakage until August or for 6 months? When you're dealing with millions of dollars in drainage and irrigation, you can't be sure. It takes time to know if there's a problem. So that's an issue that I have. I also think it's wrong to turn public parkland over to a private entity that will charge hundreds of dollars for tickets or thousands of dollars while closing the parade ground to our sports teams, recreational users, cricket, softball, soccer, school groups. This is a serious issue. It's something that I just can't abide. Construction of the stadium for 34,000 people. For the games, soft games in May and bigger games in June will create nightmares for the local community, and I believe the 50th precinct. Mostly alcohol is served at events. We've never had 34,000 people like this coming. I don't know, without a staging plan, there's no traffic plan, where are the bathrooms, parking will be taken away from residents. I mean, locally, it's a real hardship. So for those reasons, it's not any different from when they wanted the concert in Van Cortlandt Park 3 years ago. At that juncture, the board disapproved that. The Arts Department disapproved it because they said it was the wrong place for it, and I feel very strongly nothing has changed.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Really good, really good.
Marty, you're next.
Thank you. I'll be brief. From the diagram that I've seen in the proposal that was given to us, one has the impression that the stadium will be plopped in by helicopter or something, because there's no reference to construction vehicles, the damage done to get to that site, and what corrections they will do after they leave, not there at all. I'm also concerned with the park. The only, and the design, the only thing I see.
We cannot hear you.
Oh,
Can you put the phone closer to Marty so they can hear better? Please, thank you.
No, they have one microphone. No.
Is this the microphone here?
I'll talk to the mic. Hello, Mike.
Can you hear him now?
My second issue is that in the diagram, the only way to get to the stadium would be the walkway to the Van Cortlandt Mansion. Yankee Stadium doesn't have one entrance and exit. You gotta, the whole park, having 6,000, 7,000 people for a concert or walking on the lawn is one thing. Having 38,000 people dispersed all over the land is more than just the physical presence of the stadium. It's gonna impact much more than that. And my final point is, and going back to the Van Cortlandt, going back to the reservoir and the fights we had over the reservoir, where we said, is the water coming down from the Catskills into the city or going to Manhattan? Why isn't that reservoir in Central Park? Heresy! How dare you mention Central Park? Well, why isn't this in Central Park? My sense is if they don't want it, they won't accept it, why should we?
Thank you, Marty. I'll go this way and then I'll come back. Margaret?
Thanks, Deb. I guess the only thing that I wanted to add that I feel hasn't been said already is that what are the opportunity costs? Usually, in May, there's actually year-round, folks are playing soccer, which I have a special affinity for. In June, we have the Philharmonic. Every single weekend we have of the fall and into the early winter, we have cross-country meets. We have, kids coming from all over the state and the East Coast for those kinds of events. I am someone who lives in an apartment. I use Van Cortlandt Park nearly every single day. I'm there running. I'm with my run groups. I'm walking my dogs. I see people out every single day taking advantage of that space. As much as I would love FIFA to come in 2026, I just, I think that this is a real hardship, and it does, from bathrooms to all of the other pieces that folks have raised, I do think that we do have to look at the opportunity costs that will be missed and that we'll be giving up, where the dollars perhaps are being spent in the Bronx, but perhaps not.
Ed?
Okay, so from a public safety standpoint, I heard Councilman Dinowitz mention the PEP officers and Parks Department, and Laura mentioned the 50th precinct. So under normal circumstances in our community, we don't have enough PEP officers and park personnel to handle basically what's run-of-the-mill stuff in our community. We don't have enough to handle these issues. So I can only imagine how they're going to beef up security or personnel. We talk about Yankee Stadium, all the security they have at Yankee Stadium. I can't imagine, has this been planned out? We really haven't heard anything about what's the plan for public safety, because there's a lot of, you see all the beefed up security at Yankee Stadium, so that's a major issue. The 50th precinct just doesn't have the personnel, again, like the Parks Department, to handle regular things that we need to have taken care of in our community. So you add all these additional, and it's a huge amount of additional detail that they're going to need for this. Where is the manpower going to be coming from? I don't know.
Dave?
Yes, I would note that the college invitational should not be a problem, because that's typically in October, well after this process. But it's still the access to the running trails and springtime races, et cetera, is very important. I think that where the Assembly member, mentioned the alienation of the park, I think that's basically the principle that we should start from, because it will be alienated from us for 6 to 8 months. And so I think the tack that we should take on this is, how could this work the way we want it to? And the powers that be make it conform to something that works for us? Because so far, all we've been told, this is how it's going to go. And we've already identified a number of problems with that. I think that we should be brought into a conversation saying that if X, Y, and Z, security issues, a bond for the irrigation, et cetera, if those things are addressed, then
let me call you back. All right.
then we would have something to work with. So I wouldn't say no, but I'm clearly not ready to say yes.
I'd like to add one thing to what you're saying, that my expectation when it's speaking to like Stephanie Ehrlich and some folks around the Parks Department about what would be the outcome after August, their concerns were that it would go into the fall to get repairs done to the track once the equipment was gone. So that's why I quoted the Manhattan College Invitational. And one other thing I just want to add is the definition of alienation, since we're talking about it and not everybody might know what that is. So I want to quote from the Handbook on the Alienation and Conversion of Municipal Parkland, from version 9/1, 2017, not a New York Times bestseller, you might guess. Quote, alienation is a substantial intrusion on municipal parkland used for non-park purposes, even if the landowner does not convey title or intends to eventually restore the parkland. It goes further to say restricting access to local residents when parkland has previously been open to the general public is an alienation. So it seems very clear. So I just want to get that out there since.
Okay, so the next person, please. Hey, Deb? Deb, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just gonna,
Hey, Deb.
I'm gonna go back. Just want to speak on this side.
I think I was. Go ahead, Steve.
Yep, you want to go?
Yeah, well, I just want to lift up everything that everyone said already about concerns. The alienation issue, I think, is a very important direction to go, because the folks that really depend upon that park will not have utilization of that park for a substantive period of time. And those who will have the utilization of that park are not necessarily those who live near the park, nor see this as their community. One of the arguments that's been made by stadiums time and time again, and I think we need to take a look at that from the many studies, that there's going to be economic benefit to the community. There is no history, no data that proves that there's an economic benefit to the community, other than for the pathway between the park and the local subway, or the park and the parking lot, and obviously there's not enough parking. So I think that the detrimental effect on the community cannot be outweighed by any promises and that are half-made. We take a look at the data, and I think this needs to be looked at through the lens. I do not see any benefit that's going to come to the people of the Bronx in large measure, or certainly the people that surround the park and the utilization of the park. The use of the word alienation is a very appropriate term. It will be alienated from those who live in the community. Therefore, it will be an alien situation within a community.
I'm going to go back.
Hey, Deb, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Who was that just spoke, please?
I'm sorry,
I
what?
can't see. They have their head to my back. Who was that spoke? I just want to note it.
That was Robert Kaplan?
Hi, I see your head, that's why. Thank you.
Bob
Go ahead.
Kaplan.
The only one who called me Robert was my mother.
Yeah, no, I know that feeling.
You were in trouble.
That's the only person who called me Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
I assume that, just a sort of more of a point of information, I assume that the reason that we're talking about alienation is what you just read out of the handbook, and that does not happen when someone holds a concert for a night in Central Park, and it doesn't happen when the Philharmonic shows up here, because that would be nuts.
That's because it's free. Anybody can attend the New York Philharmonic when they come because it's free, so it's not an alienation. if one were to charge.
There's also the global concerts that for many, many years were in Central Park and attracted over 10,000 people, and those were ticketed events, as well as free for some people if they had.
There are concession areas, so maybe those are happening I don't know what
Anyway.
yeah.
What I'm concerned, somewhat along the lines of what Chuck said, I don't think that we should have knee-jerk reactions to everything that's proposed for the community because someone's gonna lose a parking spot. And I don't mean to minimize what here, I think, are obstacles that may not be able to be overcome. But I also think that we cannot be so closed off that anything that out of the ordinary is rejected out of hand by the community and by the community board. A couple of years ago, there was a tennis tournament, I think it was a 250 level tournament in Crotona Park, and it was amazing. Literally, the WTA came to the Bronx, and they held a week-long tournament, just like the stuff you can watch on TV. Highly ranked players, stars, were there, and but one big difference is they already had a facility built. And to the extent that they used other tennis courts nearby, it was ephemeral. It was a few days and practice only. So it didn't really do any damage. They already had that, tennis facility there. But it was a great day or a great week for the Bronx. And I think we need to be open to that kind of thing. What's that? The other thing is that, and it may not apply here, the risks may be too great and the disruption may be too great and the deprivation of people being able to use the park may be too great, but, there are ways that people can come in, use a facility or an area, and then in return for that, promise to not just restore, but refurbish, renovate. You can literally, someone can come in, build a temporary stadium in this case, and I'm not saying it works here, and leave behind 8 beautiful, cricket pitches, for example, or a new irrigation system. Again, you'd have to have, as Chuck said, you'd have to have legal backup, you'd have to have a bond or stuff I don't even know about, so that you didn't have to hope that they'd answer your phone call in Dubai. So, I just think that this kind of thing is not out of the question. It may be here, but we really shouldn't be like, oh, it's got to go through, an assembly vote and we only work 3 months a year and forget about it. It can't, it just shouldn't be ruled out that quickly. But I do see that this may not be feasible.
Thank you, Steve.
Anybody? Nick?
Yeah, to that point, I love this idea in the abstract, but in the lack of details, we really can't make a determination in terms of feasibility. If it were feasible, if we could make that determination, then there could be an economic benefit to the businesses. To Bob Kaplan's point, oftentimes service sector jobs that for events like these tend to have very low multipliers, which means they don't have a huge long-term economic benefit. So in addition to any other in addition to any other community benefits agreement that we make in terms of the protection or the capital improvements to the park, which it desperately needs, there should also be a coordination with the BOEDC, the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation, the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, and EDC that align with the long-term economic development objectives of the community so that it is not something that's transitory and temporary.
Nick? I'm done.
So being Caribbean and also playing cricket, I was really excited when I heard that New York City had the potential to host this tournament. But after looking over the plan and things that we were given, I just think the cost outweighs the benefits of this cricket this cricket tournament being held in Van Cortlandt Park. And I think, to Chuck's point, I think we definitely need to submit our laundry list of things that we want to see, get done before another plan is presented back to this board. And I'll stop right there.
Anybody else? Any other board members?
Well, I have board members online. Let me know when you finish in the room and then I'll call them on the Zoom here.
Okay, I think we've got Sergio.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I love Van Cortlandt Park. My mother still lives at 180 Van Cortlandt Park next to Visitation. It's my backyard. I moved across the street from Van Cortlandt Park. You know, this has a direct lifelong love for this place impact and a real everyday impact because of where I live now. However, I will speak on something, you know, I think Chuck alluded to it possibly, but attitude matters. And I think the attitude of this board, I've been on it for a couple of years now, is often knee-jerk no. And what happens when you do knee-jerk no is that we're no longer at the table. I think we need to be careful about the tone that we put out, about the resolutions that we put out, because people see that and say, well, we don't need them legally, so we're just going to go around them. And I think we should be looking to get a good community benefits agreement if this happens. And I don't know if it's a done deal or not, because sometimes these things are, but it may not be, and we need to be at the table. So my only suggestion in this whole process is that attitude matters, and if we have questions, there are ways to pose questions and there are ways to cross-examine people. Nobody likes the latter. So that's what I wanted to speak about for this process, as I feel for all processes, but certainly for something of this magnitude. Thank you.
Sure, Jim. Anybody else in the room on board? All right, Julie, I hand it back to you.
Okay, thanks. I think I saw Chris Calhoun. Do you have anything to say? The hand was up early, I believe. No? Okay, Margaret Donato, did you have anything to say?
After the board. After the board.
She may be muted, and I'll look for her number, and if she does, we'll bring her back on. So,
Hi, Julie, I'm here.
That's Chris, okay.
Yes.
You had your hand raised. Do you want it to speak?
Yeah, just briefly,
Hello?
the only thing I want to say, which probably wasn't mentioned, is I hate that the park would be taken away from the majority of the community. This is our largest recreation area. Although not the largest park in the city, that's Pelham Bay Park, which most of you know. I'm also in agreement with Jeff, Eric, and Deb about PEP. Deb especially has been pushing for additional PEP officers for VCP for years, and I would love to see that be a part of it. And with my fellow comrade Ed, the 50th precinct is stretched pretty thin. I don't know how they cover this whole venue going forward. However, somebody that would benefit from this and really hasn't been brought up yet is our beloved businesses. And I'm going to stretch it a little further south. I'm going to stretch it from 238th up to Marshallou Avenue. They would reap from this. And a lot of them have been there through the thick and thin of things. And I just saw how they did during the Philharmonic, which I attended, which is a wonderful event. And if any of the business owners are here, which are all our neighbors and friends, they would really do well for a venue like this. That's all I have to say, and listening to me.
Thank you, Chris. Margaret Donato?
No, I don't have anything to say, hon. That
Okay,
was
great.
from before.
Okay, thank you. I'll move
Okay.
to that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now there are no more board members, so we're going to move on to first the people who requested to speak, and then the people who have their hands raised. I will call you in order for the people who have your hands raised because there's quite a few and it goes in order, thankfully. Okay, the first three that will be up, so you're ready for when the next person finishes. The first one will be Chris Rizzo, then Karen Argenti, then Debbie Dolan. Please, 2 minutes. And Chris Rizzo. I will look for you if you cannot unmute.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'll keep it short since you have many speakers. I'm a resident and I have been a longtime supporter of Van Cortlandt Park, as many of you know, but I'm also an environmental lawyer who has worked on parkland and parkland alienation issues for about 25 years. And based on what little I know about this proposal, I have a number of very deep legal concerns about it. And I don't think these are close calls at all. Number one, I believe the stadium requires approval of the New York State Legislature under the Public Trust Doctrine. And that approval almost always comes with a requirement for mitigation and compensation for the impacted park. Number two, the stadium requires an environmental impact statement under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It is a type 1 action, which is a type of action which presumptively under the law requires an environmental impact statement. That takes 6 to 12 months to prepare. And it's an important process which outlines and addresses all the environmental impacts of a stadium of this size: traffic, parking, noise, policing, etc. Number three, I'm deeply concerned that the proponent of this stadium doesn't realize that stadiums in New York City require a special permit from the New York City Planning Commission. That's an important process. It's an important public process that goes through ULURP, which is intended to address all the potentially harmful impacts of a stadium of this size and magnitude. Number four, for the Franchise and Concession Review Committee of the Mayor's Office to issue a concession for a stadium like this requires a number of special findings and a public process. And one of the findings is that issuing a sole source concession like this is in the best interest of the city. I'm not convinced that's the case here, particularly without any plan for very significant mitigation and compensation for the park that's going to be impacted by this. So there are a number of other legal issues which I think have to be raised and addressed here, but I'm very concerned about the mayor's office and the ICC not addressing these issues, not having a plan for these issues. And at present, the stadium is really not complying with legal processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Karen Agenzi.
Hi, can you see me?
Oh, I see you.
Okay. Hi, good evening, neighbors. My name is Karen Argenti. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Directors of the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality, BCEQ. We are a 53-year-old volunteer 501c3 organization with board and community members representing every corner of the Bronx on environmental protection. We find this proposal in Van Cortlandt Park Parade grounds to be wrong and potentially destructive on many grounds, mostly because the city has failed to be transparent and follow the required processes. We have also retained legal assistance to represent our interests if need be. This is a tale of two cities. In the Bronx, the money the city negotiates for free Bronx land goes to the general fund, not to any park. But if this was in Central Park, that conservancy would get the money and it would go into the park. But that does not happen in the Bronx because the city sets the Manhattan corporate standard, which is too high for our Bronx Parks Alliance / conservancies to hit all the time. Once again, the city is taking land in the Bronx because our land is for sale and they get to keep the money. This time with no transparency or review so far. This is not an appropriate site for a stadium. Here are some of our concerns. Parkland is protected under the public trust, as Chris had said, and it belongs to the people, not the city. Part of that alienation process is to identify not only the lost parkland and uses, but also to focus on how you substitute for them. For instance, State Parks supports a no net loss of parkland policy. In the case of the last temporary alienation of 40 acres in the same park, that amounted to $220 million for new parkland in the Bronx. For Yankee Stadium, it was even more than that, even though it was a smaller facility. As you've heard, the state legislature is not in session. About the environmental impact statements, Chris identified a lot of the impacts, but were there any other alternatives looked at? Is my time up now?
Put up on time.
Yes, just say 1 second.
Okay. So I think what we should do is, I agree that we need a ULURP, we need the concessions, we need them to do a Vendex, or now it's called Passport. I'm also concerned, and we are also concerned about the impact on the daylighting project. Whatever happens, they cannot intrude upon that because it's under a consent order and a very quick time frame. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Karen, for everything you do. Thank you. Okay, the next speaker, Debbie Dolan.
First, I'd like to thank Laura Swalter for her dedicated service as chair of CBA and welcome our new chair.
Thank
Julie
you.
Reyes. I've been
Thank you.
conservation chair at Hudson River Audubon Society for 3 years. I'm a volunteer trail maintainer in Van Cortlandt Park. For the last 10 years, I've been a nature walk leader for the nature group of Van Cortlandt Park, offering 2 walks per month to a mailing list of well over 600 nature enthusiasts. I am strongly opposed to the proposal to build a cricket stadium on the parade ground. In the southeast section, we have an especially sensitive birding area. In 1998, Van Cortlandt was designated as an important bird area in New York State by National Audubon. About 230 bird species have been reported here. I'd like to read a quote from the book Urban Ornithology, 150 Years of Birds in New York City. Much of the data compiled by Paul Buckley comes from John Kieran. One of our nature trails is named for this Bronx birder. Quote, owing to its large percentage of native grasses and flowers, the remaining parade ground still attracts significant numbers of native birds seasonally for over 100 years. Killdeer, sandpipers, hornlarks, snow buntings, Lapland longspurs, meadowlarks, and other ground-loving species. The ecological bottom was cut away when nearly all native grasses were removed and replaced by sterile hybrid turf grass from 2010 to 2012. Only a corner in the southeast remains relatively undisturbed, and native birds still flock there year-round. But even that is slated for replacement by turf grass required in cricket pitches, end quote. We must not allow precious wildlife habitat to become degraded. Grassland birds have experienced a 53% reduction in population since 1970. Habitat loss poses the biggest threat to birds. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. The next 3 speakers will be Deirdre Burke, Judy Mills Johnson, and Stephanie Elridge. So Deirdre, if you're there, please speak.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am speaking for the Broadway Community Alliance, of which I am a member, and it's a group of neighbors who deeply appreciate all our community resources. Van Cortlandt Park is the front yard for thousands of people in our community. The proposed cricket stadium would have 3/4 the capacity of Yankee Stadium and more than 80% the capacity of Citi Field without their infrastructure. It can cause enormous damage to our community. We've heard many, many reasons why this is not a great idea, not the least that it will displace amateur cricket players, many of whom live in our community and have been playing in Van Cortlandt Park for decades. As an aside, more than 30 years ago, my son became fascinated with cricket and we used to go to watch the matches. And cricket players are uniquely respectful of the park. And I would like to thank them and for that experience. The mayor's latest newsletter closes by exhorting New Yorkers to get outside. That is exactly what the members of the diverse, equitable, and inclusive community who reside on the Broadway corridor across from Van Cortlandt Park do each day. In addition, Van Cortlandt Park is a regional destination served by more than 3 million people, that serves more than 3 million people each year. This proposal would deny thousands of those visitors the right to use their park when they need it most. I urge elected officials and board members to look deeply into this project and to oppose the project or seek ways to mitigate it. I've submitted the statement to the board, so if anybody wants it, and I thank you for your time. Congratulations, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you
You
so much.
really had to step up so quickly, and you've done an awesome job. Thank you.
That's because there's a great staff and great board members that are incredible, but thank you. Okay. Judy Mills Johnson.
Hello, I'm Judy Mills Johnson, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance. Van Cortlandt Park is home to the game of cricket. It's the second most popular sport in the world, with 8 cricket pitches in our park, serving 2 local leagues with dozens of teams. While the T20 Cricket World Cup is an important tournament, and we understand why our amazing park would be proposed as a venue, Van Cortlandt Park Alliance is concerned about the impact of the tournament and what it could have on the park itself and our users. If the International Cricket Council chooses to pursue Van Cortlandt Park as the site of its T20 Cricket World Cup, it should fully examine all of the processes imposed by New York State and New York City law meant to protect park users, which cannot be overlooked or bypassed. There are rules and regulations which require proper community engagement, public disclosure, environmental review, and potentially new legislation to successfully carry out such an endeavor. Together, all of these processes take significant time and resources, the timing of which may not align with ICC's desire to host the tournament in the park in less than 1 year. Based on the limited knowledge we possess of this proposal, we are not alone with our questions, as we see tonight, and concerns regarding the project's short-term and potentially long-lasting impact on the park and the surrounding community. Van Cortlandt Park Alliance requests a seat at the table to have these many questions and concerns thoroughly addressed by ICC before proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And I'll remind everyone, if you have anything that your statement, feel free to send it to the office so that we can also attach it with any correspondence. Okay.
Will do.
Next one is Stephanie Elwood.
It's Ehrlich, and I don't need to speak because Judy Mills Johnson has spoken for the Alliance. Thank you.
Okay, great, and it's Elwood. Thank you. Okay. Because we're getting close to that hour. The next 4 are Chad Y. Lawyer from CD7, welcome. Stephanie
you.
Coggins, Rob Spalter, and Miriam Gomez. So, Chad, you're up first.
Hi, thank you. This is Chad Royer, and first, congratulations on your position. Question and comments. I've been hearing folks have worries that the stadium will be built over grounds where folks have been buried over some time. Do we have any assurances as to where the folks actually have been buried so that the building won't be built on top of them? And then my other question is, let's say that they do decide to go forth with the project, what assurances can we have where we can get something in return, like enforcement, like a dedicated crew of enforcement for the parks, which is something that we are in desperate need of, even on my side, but especially yours, because Van Cortlandt Park is one of the nicest parks that I've ever been to. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have our elected officials and they're working on everything. We're not even at the stage where they selected it, but just in case, we have your questions and concerns that we're putting onto a long list that we have already. And we will be having another meeting after following this if we are chosen.
Thank you.
Deb Travers will get in touch with everyone personally. Okay, so the next one is Stephanie. I know.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Stephanie Coggins and I'm a community activist. I briefly want to address the mayor's representative and the representative for the borough president's office to let them know that I am one of the many people who have been promoting this meeting today to make sure that we have as full community engagement as possible. I am also the administrator of two relevant Facebook groups, of which we have several thousand members. And I can tell the mayor's office and the borough president's office that although you only see about 160 people on this call, that there are several thousands of people on social media who are already opposed to this plan. My groups are the Bronx District 11, Bronx City Council District 11 Voters Forum, which is a forum for the for dialogue on voters' issues relating to the Northwest Bronx and the Riverdale, Spiden-Duyvil, Kingsbridge, Inwood Views, which is a Facebook group of over 2,000 members relating to community and culture, including green space and history. One of the issues that I have not heard discussed except by Ms. Dolan was the issue of the impact on the green space and nature in the park. On a daily basis, I have members who are posting pictures of birds that exist in the park that will be deeply affected by the disruption of the construction and the presence of 34,000 people in the park. And in addition, the enslaved person's burial site being adjacent to the stadium will be affected, and also the Van Cortlandt House Museum will also be affected. So it's more than just a business issue. It's also an issue of ecological preservation and historical preservation. These are incredibly important issues to the Riverdale at large community. And I'm putting it on record that I am quite certain that the community at large will be deeply opposed to this, not just because it's a community of no, but it's a community of green space and appreciation for our history. Thank you.
Thank you.
My bell. The next one is Rob Spolter. Very nice to see you.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is Rob Spolter. The New York City Department of Parks and Recreation website describes Van Cortlandt Park from the quiet green shades of its oak forest to the crisp white mantle of cricket players atop the parade ground. The park boasts a past rich in culture, well-versed in history, and blessed with the intrinsic beauty of nature. I now refer to a July 18th article in The City describing a new threat to our parks. It explains how for-profit businesses are heavily lobbying the mayor and DPR to change the rules and guidelines for New York City parks in order to accommodate large-scale multi-day festival events. These proposed changes would be devastating not only to Van Cortlandt Park, but to parks throughout the city. The article describes at a public hearing earlier this month, major promoters like Live Nation, AEG Presents, and Founders Entertainment convened to make Flushing Meadows Corona Park more available for large-scale multi-day events. We're excited that the park is open for business, said Dante DePasquale, Vice President of Talent at AEG Presents. Well, Mr. Mayor, our park is not for sale. This jewel of the Bronx is a source of peaceful beauty and appreciation of nature to our neighbors. This community must fight any proposed watering down of city or state regulations that currently protect our parklands. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Okay, Miriam Gomez?
Is that me?
No, Miriam. Wait, there you go. We're unmuted.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone touched on everything I wanted to say. I was a runner. I used to run from PS 81 down to Van Cortlandt. I actually have the 15K Masters trophy back there somewhere. it's everybody's park. It's not just for show, for making money. These are runners, these are cricket players, they're baseball players, it's everybody's park. And to make this a profit thing, it's not right. It's not right for the Bronx, it's not right for us who live here. There's other places that already have Randall's Island, Sports Center. Why can't we use that instead? They're already there. They have everything that they need. Just because the mayor says, let's go to Van Cortlandt Park. But thank you for letting me get that out.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you so much. Almost done. Just have a few more people. The next four will be Belinda's iPad, Jade, John Moore, and Thomas McGuire. So Belinda's iPad.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, good evening, and thank you. Besides all the other issues that was brought up, I was on a Zoom meeting a few years ago in regards to the charter buses parking when they dropped off the runners. You know, they park in the bus, the regular city bus stoppers, which makes it very difficult for the handicapped, anybody who has a walker, a wheelchair, somebody with a stroller to board, because the city buses cannot park. I was told that, provision would be made for these buses to park elsewhere after they dropped off their runners. That never came into fruition. I have a feeling the same thing is going to happen with this. Number two, in regards to the infrastructure, you know, the electricity and the plumbing, okay, if I don't know whether they took in consideration how much voltage to light up the area. What happens is a power outage. Will we be compensated for loss of food, electricity, so on and so forth? Okay. And another issue, for those who rely on the public transportation, the number 9 bus and the B-line buses, if we have these hordes of people coming around from all over, what about the local people who rely on the public transportation to get to work on time? We will be inconvenienced because of the backlog of traffic. Are we supposed to leave like an hour earlier than our normal time to make sure that we get to work on time? And that's all I have to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you. It hasn't been chosen, so just throwing it out there. Jade, John Moore, and Thomas McGuire.
Hey everybody, my name is Jade. I live in Van Cortlandt Village, right below the southwest corner of the park. I want to reiterate a few things that people have said already. The park is home to so much wildlife, and we've mentioned birds.
Excuse me, Jade. Jade, can I
Yes.
just stop you a minute? I had asked in the beginning if someone already said something, because there are quite a few, and we normally don't take the whole session of a meeting, because this won't happen again.
I understand.
If they
I'm
said it
not- I'm
already,
not
give us
going
something
to-
new, let other people, there's a whole
No,
lot.
I understand. I just wanted to use that to support something else I was saying. We've
Okay.
mentioned the amount of birds. We have a bunch of other wildlife that would be displaced from the construction, the noise of the construction, the noise of the events, and the lighting that probably will be on for most of the day and evening, which is not standard for the park right now. Again, we don't know how we're going to get that electricity. Something I haven't heard anyone mention is the amount of waste that we will have in the park from hosting. We already have a terrible rat problem. Rats chewed and caused $5,000 of damage in my car. We're going to either push them all out of the park and into our homes, or we're going to attract all of them with the amount of waste that will be there. I am not an engineer or scientist, but somebody mentioned there's no irrigation in this area of the park. We have had so much heavy rain in the past 2 weeks. Climate change is only getting worse. I imagine we will have more next year. Where's all this water going? We have nowhere to filter this water out to. And even if we do find a way, I imagine there's going to be a lot more standing water bringing mosquitoes, more mosquitoes into the park, hurting the people and hurting the animals that live in the park. I am looking at a rendering of what this could look like online, and everybody's mentioning it'll be this much acreage, it'll be that much acreage. The stadium is not aligned with the Broadway section of the park, meaning that people will have to cross over, and it will really take a lot more field and a lot more space to direct these people into the park. On top of that, these extra 34,000 people, which would really be more like 40 because there will be people working there, there will be media, there will be press, will visit the park, which of course we want everybody to visit what we know to be New York City's best park. But that means, again, more waste. And it also means a huge safety problem. We cannot patrol an additional, even if it was just 5,000 people a day, going into the woods, being in the mountains, being on this side of the field, this and that. It is dangerous. Not to say that the people are dangerous, but anything could happen.
Thank you, Jade. I hate to cut you off, but it's almost 9 and we have about 10 more minutes.
I'm sorry, I do just want to add one more thing very quick. I say no never to building this stadium. I think that there are other ways that the park can be included in maybe a slew.
Thank you, Jade. John?
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I've lived and worked in Manhattan for over 30 years, and I've played many, many games of cricket in Van Cortlandt Park. I'll be playing there in a New York Cricket League match this coming Sunday. I coordinate a league of 8 local clubs. I have been in touch with the members of over a dozen local clubs in total. We're all recreational cricketers, weekend warriors. None of us has been consulted by the city or anyone else about this proposal. By definition, we're all cricket lovers, but the almost universal reaction among the local recreational cricketers has been to oppose this plan. It would, if this plan went ahead, our local seasons would be devastated. We would not be able to run viable local leagues through the summer seasons. Now, you might argue that's a selfish perspective, but I've listened to the debate. I'm very familiar with Van Cortlandt Park. We're cognizant of the environment we play in, the other people who use the park. My daughter plays ultimate frisbee tournaments there, or would do when she recovers from her ACL tear. There's a major dimension to Van Cortlandt Park that I think would be lost if this proposal goes ahead. We don't see any lasting footprint that benefits recreational sports in the park when the stadium is removed. So we are almost to a person opposed to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is Tom McGuire.
Hello, and thank you for making time for me today. 50 years ago, I worked directly across the street from the North Field that cricket was played on. And I can tell you from my experience that the biggest problem that I had with the cricket players was trying to keep enough cold soda in the machines for them and keeping enough towels in the bathroom for them. They were neat, they were clean, they were polite. They were the most wonderful neighbors to have, coming up into the park and joining in Riverdale with the rest of us. It was a beautiful sport to watch. I'm not a particularly big cricket fan, but I can tell you that these guys really caught my eye. In listening to all of the complaints, it's really like you're trying to find a way to fight this, as opposed to making it fit our neighborhood. I've heard about sensitive pipes. They are not sensitive. Anything that you have to do in New York City, you must have a bond to restore it the way it was. The idea that anyone would be able to do this without providing a bond is ridiculous. It would not happen. If I needed to do a piece of work in my office downtown at 60 Hudson Street, I would have to put a bond up for $5 million if anything happened to the street underneath. Now, nobody is chasing the trucks that break the 12,000-pound limit on West 261st Street all night. I don't see why the pipes in Van Cortlandt Park are so much more sensitive than our drain pipes.
Thank you,
Coming up on our
Thomas.
time.
Thank you, Thomas. The bell just went off. I'm sorry. Okay, the next is, we have 6 more minutes, so it's going to be a little quicker. That's Viv Carter. You're up.
Yes, I'm just gonna add one point which was not brought up. I believe we have two existing stadiums within range of Van Cortlandt Park, and that's the one that Columbia operates for their football team in Inwood, and the one that is at Gaelic Park for Manhattan College. And those are already there, and we won't be having to excavate a sensitive historic site and natural site in order to put concrete footers for a 35,000 person stadium to use those. And I presume, because there's a very short timeline, that there are other venues being considered. And I think those two should be considered as alternatives to taking our parkland away from the people of the Bronx. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Jane? Is Jane still here?
There
Jane
were two more
Sokolow?
things I wanted to say. We need to negotiate to
Excuse me,
utilize
Mr.
the
McGuire, Mr. McGuire, we have to be accommodating to everyone. Okay, Jane is not here. Leona? Leona Tetson?
Yeah, hi. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a former member of the board. I also just graduated from the Bronx High School of Science, where I was a member of our cross-country team for the 2 years that we had real school. And I wanted, Deb Travis mentioned the Manhattan College Invitational at the very beginning of this meeting, but I wanted to note that it's not just the Manhattan College Invitational that takes place in Van Cortlandt Park. Van Cortlandt Park is the only PSAL cross-country course in the Bronx, and it's been the site of borough championships and city championships, as well as invitationals like the Manhattan College Invitational, the Northeast D1 regionals over the past couple of years. And according to the renderings, the stadium sits right on the course. And even though technically the timeline for the course is from January to May, or they'll take it down in July or whatever they say, first of all, I'm highly skeptical that it'll be taken down in a timely fashion. And the cross-country season, training begins in August, meets begin in September, not to mention that while we're trying to repair the land that has been damaged by the stadium, there's going to be hundreds of kids stampeding across it. So I think the detriment to the cross-country season is something that hasn't been mentioned as much. And it's something that's has a massive effect, not on every high schooler who runs in the city. And that's not just the PSAL, that's the Catholic Schools League, that's the Ivy League, the like middle school Ivy League, the private high school leagues, the colleges that run there. And it would have a massive impact and would probably potentially derail the entire season.
Thank you, Leona.
Julie.
Thank you.
Julie,
Yes.
it's Jane Sokolow. I just had trouble unmuting. I just have 2 points. The first is.
Okay, I just want to thank Leona because she's done a lot for the board here, and it's great to have the young people involved. Thank you, Leona. Okay, go ahead, Jane, you're here.
Yes, there are just 2 things I want to mention because everything else has already been mentioned.
Thank you.
One is the electrical infrastructure. I understand there was a huge blackout on Broadway and the mansion was out of commission all day today. So, you know, I don't know how Con Ed is going to fit into this, but there clearly is not enough electricity going in there to support a stadium like this. And the second thing I want to mention is to the person who was talking about the benefit to the local economy and businesses. I don't think that'll happen. I think they'll bring their own concessionaires and they'll try to keep everybody at the stadium and not wandering around just like the Yankees did. So I just wanted to make those 2 points. And thank you, Chris Rizzo. I know you're not still on. Good presentation.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Seth Kaplan. And then after Seth, it's just 3 more, and then it goes back to Deb. Seth Kaplan, Tom
I'm
Kelly.
here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, go right ahead.
Yeah, I live 20 miles south of you all. I'm by Prospect Park. I've been very active here. Going back about 10 years ago when we were back with the Bloomberg administration, they had a similar approach to what you're seeing here, which is to let corporations use the park for, you know, whatever purposes they wanted, really. We had something called Googa Mooga, which brought 50,000 people into the park for 2 days for 2 years in a row. What I want to point out to you is that don't be fooled by this mention of this temporary structure. They're not going to leave it there for a long time. What's going to happen is the construction vehicles that come in to put up these structures will crack your pathways. They will crack the roadways. They will leave indelible permanent damage to the greenland there. And I just want to say, some people were mentioning some of the legal issues. I don't expect them to listen to you. They may give some, some sort of semblance, but if you can sue, I would recommend that you sue early and get ahead of it, because they're going to put it in your park and you cannot accommodate 35,000 people. Believe me, I've seen it here. I was very involved. And so I just came on here at the request of Noel Heffley and Yoshiko Mori, who live in your community. I would get ahead of it because they're going to do it. Thank you. Can't hear you.
I said, thank you. We appreciate you being a good neighbor. Definitely appreciate it. Okay, the last three are Tom Kelly, Curtis Clark, and Chris's Yarina's iPhone. And that's it.
Hi, thank you. And many thanks to the honorable members of the Community Board 8. The Herculean effort you've mobilized in record time is humbling for those of us who consider the Bronx our home. As many of you know, I'm the head of Horace Mann School directly across from the park. Our school is the largest private donor to the park, and we provide labor to maintain the park at no cost to anyone. In fact, we paid for the tennis courts to be redone 2 years in a row. So those hard 2 courts were a thank you to Van Cortlandt Park for allowing us to use them during our construction. If I had one thing to suggest or one thing to ask, it would be the possibility of private funding to rescue not only the Bronx, but a park desperately in need. The city has not been there for us before, as we saw with the filtration plant. They were not with us during COVID, as we saw with vaccinations being offered during the day when our parents work. But with the remote possibility that an independent agency with infinite funding could give us the time to do this correctly, right-sized in a portion of the park where the facilities disrupted could be recreated and moved temporarily within the park. I think the best thing we could do is to ask the Dubai ICC-based T20. This runs every 2 years. If they're serious about New York and the Bronx as a showcase, would they push this out to the next T20 tournament and give us the time, the courtesy, and the seat at the table to possibly do this right and make it a win for the kids in the Bronx? But I thank you. I know how difficult this is. You supported my 100,000 square feet of space. You held my feet to the fire. And all I ask is you do the same thing to the Dubai ICC. But let's not forget, the Bronx is in desperate need of private funding. In the absence of it, we would not have Central Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So Curtis Clark. Okay, and then if Curtis Clark is not here, then we'll go to Chris Yarina.
Hello,
Yes,
can you
hi.
hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Chris. Last summer I started working with the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, and then this year I am now just volunteering. So I'm up in the Northwest Forest, but I also help out down at the lake near the golf courses. So I see some of the problems already that we're facing with the park environmentally. So one of the biggest problems is that I'll get to this kind of relates to the cricket, but I'll get to that. So we have a water chestnut invasive plants that cover the entire lake. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's a big issue. And I just feel like focusing attention on, everyone wanting to put up a cricket stadium is it's just another, it's just something else that's going to perpetuate capitalism and profit gain and corporation gains and stuff. It just really angers me that that the people leading this, that want to actually build this, just all they focus on is, again, the number one thing in this country is sports and profit. It's just all about the money. And I'm not at all surprised that the mayor of the city is in support of it. I think he could do much better, and he should honestly look to, oh, maybe fund some money for a company to bring in a netting company that could scoop out all the water chestnuts, so we just don't have volunteers just taking it out one by one, which is just a drop in a bucket. So that's my take on it. I wish we could just focus on other things. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes the community portion of it. I just want to thank everyone for being patient with us. We're not finished. I know we're not finished. I just want to
I
thank.
know, but you don't know what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Alina Dow is in the room. I
Yeah.
believe she has something she would like to say, or no, you just want to acknowledge that you're here?
Yeah, I've been here, I just, they forgot to.
I can vouch.
From the mayor.
Alina Dow from the mayor's office is here, and I can vouch she has been here, standing right there.
I had asked for other elected officials representative in the beginning, but hello and thank you. And I mentioned at the beginning of the session that she spoke with Farah and I, the district earlier today, and that ICC has positive steps that they want to work with us and everything that they had offered that they would be doing. I'd just like to just conclude this session and say I only had to ask two people to step off, and that was Mr. McGuire and Jade, and I apologize, but we're time crunch here. If there's anything further you want to say, please send it into the board office, because I don't want you to think that you're not being heard. And I apologize, Mr. McGuire and Jade, those are the only two, and I'm glad because nobody wanted me to use this timer. Anyway, so with that, I'll hand it back to you, Deb, because now we're at the end of the session. We started late, so we're pretty much on time. We're at item number 5, discussion of board and next steps.
Julie, you want me to take over?
Yeah, this is the end of it. It's you.
So so now that we've gotten to 9 o'clock hour, what do we do about this? I would like to put forth the idea that we have a resolution. I think we should, because that's how the board acts. I think we should decide on what we would like to therefore be it resolved to say. And then if we, depending on how long that takes, whatever, we can work back to the rest of it. But I feel like that's really the nut of it. I would like to put forth the idea that the therefore be it resolved should both, that there should be two. One is to thank the Mayor Adams and the mayor's office for looking at the Bronx and considering doing a project of this prestige in our community, and that we encourage the conversation about major capital expenditure in Van Cortlandt Park to continue. I think that is important to say, and we don't want to lose out on that opportunity. I think that that's true. The other piece is I would strongly argue that there's no viable path forward because of the legal requirements to alienate this parkland, that it would be impossible for them to actually do this work starting in January, and that the ICC just may not simply be aware of all of the legal hurdles. But we would all, love to have a proper, full conversation that they do this every 2 years, and that maybe there is an opportunity at an appropriate place in the Bronx. Maybe don't make this. We have a stadium that has been on our capital budget priorities list for many years that for a study to fund what to do with it, right? So we want to continue to have a conversation, but I don't think it's appropriate for this project at this time because of the legal hurdles and the January deadline. So I would put forth, therefore be it resolved, that Community Board 8 calls on Mayor Adams and the International Cricket Council to recognize that there's no viable path forward for the T20 Men's Cricket World Cup at this location, at this time, and to consider alternative private locations with existing infrastructure appropriate to this use.
Madam Chair, I move to table. Listen, it's a very nice thing to get facts before you make a decision. You just made the statement, there's no way you can get the legislature to act. Well, legislature passes every year, bills that hit the floor in the morning and get passed that afternoon. It can be done if there's a will. It would be nice to do the following. If between now and August or September, task force of the board were to look at this, or of the Parks Committee, to put together the facts, pro and con, and present it. To put a resolution on the floor based on conversation is meaningless. It's, in fact, it's insulting.
Madam Chair, point of order, there's a motion to the table which takes precedence over the submission of the resolution. It hasn't been seconded yet. I believe we have to address. It's been seconded by Julia Gomez. That motion takes precedence over the submission of the resolution. I believe, Madam Chair, it may call for discussion on the tabling now.
Point of information, I hear Chuck say 2 parts of that resolution. 1 was the table, and 2 was to set up a task force. I think you'd have to do them separately. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the first one first. Chuck's motion, which one was your first? 2.
I believe it's the motion to
What's the
table was
table?
made by Mr. Murdler and
And it
seconded
was
by
seconded by-
Dr. Julia Gomez.
So any discussion on that?
Yes, I believe that this.
You can't discuss the table motion. You have to vote on it.
So then let's vote, vote, come on. I can't really see hands on there, so Sergio, can you do this? I can't see hands. I see heads. Can you
Sure thing.
take this part for the vote?
All right, we have a motion to table the resolution, and I'll take all in favor.
You could put my hand up.
Okay, well, I got everybody here first. That's your hand, or are you scratching yourself?
Guys are crazy.
11 present, and who's voting online?
Nobody can vote online.
They can vote
online.
Yeah.
They
Hey,
don't count for
Sergio?
quorum, but they can vote.
Omar and
Omar,
Julie?
Lee, and Julie. So my count is 14. So, right, well, we still have to take the vote. So these are the yeas. All opposed to the motion to table? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody online? Oh, 5, I'm sorry. Anybody online voting against the motion to table?
Chris,
So
how are
that's
you
5
voting?
opposed, any abstentions?
I'm voting
No
yay. I didn't
abstentions.
want to vote.
Who voted yay?
Chris Calhoun.
Okay.
15-5.
15-5, 0 abstentions, so the resolution is tabled.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. Have you recorded who voted how? The minutes have to reflect that.
Thank you, Marty. So,
Well, we know who's on there.
Right, we need it in the room. Table, you want me to run through this?
yes, please.
We'll
What,
give the name.
Marty Walpoff just made the point as a parliamentarian that we need to know who voted online.
We need
No,
to
we need
know.
to know
Every vote, every
The
vote.
minutes have to reflect who voted how.
Right,
Right.
Who does?
Mhm.
right.
Oh, right.
I don't think
that's
true. If you ask for a roll call vote, that's true. Otherwise, you don't have to have who voted which way by name.
Okay.
There were
We'll
five,
just do it
there
very
were
simply.
5 people who opposed.
Who's online? Because everyone online voted yay.
Sergio, it's just the 5 people who voted no. Make it simple.
Okay, everybody else is present. Thank you.
Wait a minute, didn't you have Margaret Donato? Is she still on?
She's so long, we didn't get a vote from her. Okay,
Margaret, I
so the
don't have
resolution is
it here.
tabled.
Where does that leave us?
That leaves us
I
with the
be-
second motion. Motion was,
I
have
believe
a
that
group look into it.
There's a second, there was a second part to this. And unless Mr. Murdler is not,
the chair of either the board or Parks Committee can establish it, and they should, in my view. I think they
It
will.
would be the chair, I believe.
So that, so
So
is someone making a motion for a special committee or for the executive committee to be authorized to act on behalf of the board?
I would respectfully move to adjourn. To carry forward.
Okay, there's a motion to adjourn. There's a second to that motion. I don't believe we
Well-
discussed the motion to adjourn. That
Excuse
much I
me,
do remember.
Sergio?
I'm sure one of them is gonna appoint a committee.
So,
Sergio.
Madam Chair, there's a motion to adjourn that's been seconded.
Well, first, there's Chuck's motion that we get a group together to further look into this. Because
Withdrew it, Julie.
He was saying
I
you
can't,
could
I
do
can't
it.
hear you people.
You withdrew the motion. There's no motion on the floor except for the motion to adjourn, which has been seconded.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for
all
attending.
in-
Thank you for being patient. and-
Wait, we need to vote on that. Do we not have to
Yes,
motion? We
yes,
had to
we
vote
do
on whether we
vote
want to
on
adjourn.
All in,
One second.
all in favor?
Aye.
1, 2,
adjourn.
4, 5, 6, 8, 9. It's gonna be a close vote. Adjourn. All right, so 9 present in the room in favor of adjournment. Anyone online in favor of adjournment?
Bruce Calhoun from Fort Lauderdale votes to adjourn.
Great state of Florida votes.
So we have 12 to adjourn total. Any opposed? 2. Yes, to adjourning. 1, 2. All right, we have 2 in the room. Did you? Oh, we're not there yet. You've done this. Come on, he's throwing a monkey wrench in it.
I'm sorry.
All right, 2 opposed in the room. Anyone online? Anyone online opposing adjournment?
No.
Is that- No? Okay, any abstentions? Now we got in the room, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the room. And anyone not here opposing, anyone online opposing or abstaining from the adjournment?
No.
No? Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.